Sucker.
Ahem. Sorry. Here with my acting exercises. Ahem. Blah, 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 blah. Don't you do these? You don't do these?
Yeah.
Of course.
A, B, C, D, E, F, G. In a baby voice. Make sure you sound like you're 3 years old.
Whatever works, right? Whatever works.
Okay, so now that your tongue is loose. So Gaza. At City College or Columbia. Your place of employment, one of them.
Yes, indeed.
So where were you in March and April 2024? What was going on campus-wise?
So the last few days in April, I guess really the last week or so in April, students created an encampment at City College in the area between Convent Avenue and Amsterdam, in the courtyard. That's just a general hangout meeting place. And I was home when it happened, but I'd been waiting for it to happen because this happened shortly after Columbia University's encampment had been invaded by the police. So I thought, oh, it took so long. And then I think it might have been on a Friday, I'm not sure, or maybe I just took the next day off, but a couple of days later when I went back to work, it was full on occupied with tents and megaphones and things like that. And I was very curious because the school's administration had made no mention of this and had no official notice, which wasn't unusual because the school's administration isn't very transparent in general. But I was really surprised that there was no statement about this and how the school intended to proceed. I was actually a little hopeful because I thought it might mean that they were going to have a policy of benign neglect and just ignore it and let it happen as long as nothing unsafe was going on.
What did you notice the emotional status of the campus was like after October 7th? Did you notice any kind of tension or shift, or did it seem like something just suddenly happened in April?
I would say there was definitely some tension. I think to the extent that really a lot of faculty and staff and students were probably wondering why there wasn't more of a student response at this particular school. And students were outraged, faculty were outraged. There was definitely some tension because closer to October and the actual horror of the attack on October 7th, so that was shocking to everyone, right? And the taking of hostages and all that. But then there was this unfortunate realization where I think a lot of us were thinking, well, that's really bad. That's really fucked up what's happened now. Like thousands of people dead in this attack, hundreds of hostages taken. However, we know what comes next, right? And that was the sad part, that we knew that the response to this attack was going to be entirely disproportionate, as we didn't realize how disproportionate, and it was going to affect people who had nothing to do with this, and that it was just going to become yet another excuse for the current regime, the current Israeli government, to do yet another land grab and yet another cleansing. And that was the really sad part. And it was just like, how can this be avoided now? So there wasn't any official statement from the university at large, and we would discuss during departmental meetings, like, what should we do? And I was also participating in a year-long group that was focused on social practice art making, and it was weird to me that the meeting we had in November, it wasn't even really spoken about until Palestinian graduate student who brought it up and just shook everyone up, and it was just like hysterical in a way. And I just kept thinking, well, this is exactly what social practice is supposed to be, right? Like, this is it, and yeah, we're all uncomfortable. Hello, here it is. This is it happening. But then, as things went on, it was almost like people were forced to get more on board and say something. Except for the board of the university, who had absolutely no official statement of what was happening beyond the initial attack on October 7th.
What did they say?
Nothing. Oh, well, about they condemned the attack by Hamas against Israeli civilians, but then after that there was nothing.
How did they communicate that?
I think they put it in an official broadcast that went out to all the different schools.
Like an email?
Yeah.
Okay.
An email, and that was that. But then the disproportionate response and the horror that came subsequently, nothing, zero. Yeah.
So in the department meeting in November, did you feel that there was tension or awkwardness? Did it feel really obvious that something was not being talked about?
Oh yeah, it was just hanging, This was my social practice meeting, right?
Okay.
Not the proper department meeting. In the proper department meeting, there was a lot of discussion about what should we do. Can we, as a department, make a statement if, in fact, the dean is not making a statement, and the provost is not making a statement, and the president is not making a statement? What are our options? So there was a lot of discussion. But at this social practice cohort, which was the place you would imagine, right, to talk about these things, yeah, it was just hanging over it. And the major part of the agenda for that meeting was this discussion of what is social practice. I'm like, oh God, this is like, you can't write this one. And I'm just like waiting for something, like, okay, what's gonna happen? And the student who eventually spoke up was sitting next to me, and we're just looking at him like, something's gonna happen. It's like, I'm gonna make something happen. I'm like, I guess so. So it just kind of hanging. Then she said, well, it's just a little, she said, maybe in our discussion about what social practice is, we could address the fact that no one said anything about what's going on in Gaza right now. And the two people that were running the program were like, oh my God, well, if you wanted us to talk about that, you should have asked us to put it on the agenda. And people started laughing. It was just like, oh, it was good. It was really good. So yeah. And then there was a sigh of relief because finally someone had said something and it was out.
Okay, so with the proper department meeting, with those questions about can we issue a formal statement, if the dean hasn't, the provost hasn't, what was the conclusion?
The conclusion was that there was really nothing we could do as a department. Only us as individuals could make whatever statement we wanted to, but we couldn't make a statement speaking as the department, because actually, according to bylaws, that has to go through media department, et cetera.
Okay, so if not putting forth a political stance, what about offering some kind of counseling or other services for students who might feel that they need that during that time?
The school did put that in place. So
how did they advertise that?
Just through regular channels of contacting faculty and staff, saying if your students are feeling that they're in some kind of mental or emotional health crisis, then these are the resources that are available. So they made more resources available, but through the same channels that usually come. So it was certainly better than nothing. But I'm thinking, if our students address it, which they're not going to, because they're not going to feel like they have the space to do that. So, of course, faculty decided to, there were discussions had in classrooms, of course. There had to be. So we addressed it individually. That's how we handled it. And then the encampment happened.
are some memorable experiences that you have from any classroom discussions? Or even hearing other faculty talk about things that happen in their classrooms?
Right. So there were discussions, and I didn't really hear that much about the particulars, just that faculty were finding space to talk about it in the classrooms, and I thought that was good. And then we would hear stories like, oh yeah, I was on a Zoom meeting with the IT guy, and he had a giant Israeli flag behind him, things like that. And I just thought, well, this is really kind of interesting because people really are kind of closing ranks or declaring where they are on these particular things. I said, I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, as long as no one's abusing the student or anything, it's all fine. But really, I would say the discussion about what particular faculty were doing was minimal. And we were really all kind of, our department chair did, at our urgence, agree to contact the dean and the provost and say, if the university at large is not going to make a statement, can we as a school say something? It is important that we do that. But we didn't hear anything.
Did you hear of anyone getting fired for expressing political views?
Not at my particular institution, but then we heard things about really contention that was happening at schools like Hunter College and some of the other schools. We would hear these stories. And overall, there was a chilling effect that was going on because working in an art department and seeing just how there was this de facto censorship that was really happening where people were losing shows. I remember...
like art shows?
Yeah, Ai Weiwei had a show in Berlin, and that got snatched away, and everyone became so paranoid. It was like, oh shit, they got Ai Weiwei. If they can get Ai Weiwei, they can get anyone. So there was a real sense of paranoia, like, oh my god, oh no, they got Ai Weiwei. They got him. So that was a little crazy, but not, they got Ai Weiwei, but they also got a bunch of artists that were, emerging artists. I do personally know some artists who, collectors said, because you liked this post on Instagram, I will never support you again. And it was wild. No, it's wild. I've actually been collecting these instances for the record, just people losing shows, people losing collectors, people losing support.
Yeah. Did you see or hear about anything that was what could be considered anti-Semitic or Islamophobic behavior at City College?
I didn't hear of anything, no. Not at City College. Again, I'd hear some stories of the other CUNYs and what was going on. But at City College, no, it was...
Were those rumors, or were they from official channels saying
they're... from official channels and things that, like news stories and things. Like, we would hear about it, and then 2 days later, it'd be on the news. I'm like, oh, okay, so that's real.
So you did hear about it from the institution at large first, not a news outlet?
Not officially from the institution at large, no, just because someone knows someone who taught at that college.
Okay.
So no, there's no official acknowledgement about these things at all, which again was weird, and I thought it was a very bad strategy to say absolutely nothing. But yeah, it was extremely charged, and this isn't the first time there's been conflict around Israel and Palestine, but this I had not seen the level of intensity. Right? On the one hand, there's this in the past. I think the use of power was less naked, less raw, and now they're just like, I have the ability to fuck your career over, and I will do it because I don't like what you said. It's like, wow, it's like nothing's been hidden anymore. So that was unfortunate. But other than that, then I think everything started to, and I guess it sounds a little cynical, but everything started to slide into the ways I've seen this happen time and time again. The thing happens, and it's horrible. And then there's a disproportionate response. You could call it an opportunity for the current government in Israel to just roll over people. And then, like, say, Jewish voices that are sympathetic to Palestinians, right, are suppressed, right? And a lot of the suppression and censorship I found academically were coming from Jewish people in academia who are being suppressed because you can't have that, right? You can't have Jewish voices that are critical of this. That's a no-no. So in that way, things just started to slide in as expected. But what was surprising was the range and the overt use of power to say, we're just going to take your show away. We're going to take your job away, and we're going to take this away.
So we're talking in early July. So the school year is going to, for you, begin end of August, correct?
The last day of August.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So do you think this fall will be different than other falls?
Well, after the president of City College called in the NYPD to break up the encampment, and they did their job and broke it up and arrested several people. After that happened, they blocked off almost all of the entrances to the campus. There were only two access points, one at 135th Street and one at Convent and 140th. And there was a checkpoint. You had to show ID, and then you had to show ID again to get into the building.
But you don't have to do that now, correct?
No, now just in the last 2 weeks they opened up the main entrance to the building where I work. But other than that, it's still, the checkpoints are still there. So it's crazy. And that affected a lot of people because if you didn't have your current sticker, they just wouldn't let you in. So faculty that were like, I'm not bothering to get my sticker. And it's been no big deal. We're locked out of their own classes. It was really insane. One of the teachers that teaches in my area was just in tears because they would not let her in. And I said, I'm going to just open your classroom and prepare it for you, and I hope they let you in. And eventually, they did. So honestly, I'm wondering how many faculty will lose in the fall. Just in the last couple of weeks, they'll say, that's it, I'm not coming back. And there's just a real distrust of the administration, even more than there was before. And the president, who I can't see lasting too long, he had a town hall in which for faculty and then a separate one for students. And in this town hall, he kept saying, I have to tell you, I really, if someone had told me 3 months ago I would be calling NYPD to come to City College, I would have said no. Maybe this isn't the job for me. And everyone was like, yeah, maybe you're right, you should quit. And then some students, God bless them, did research and found out, looking into the president's background, and found out that in the 1990s he'd been arrested 5 times for protesting for divestment in South Africa.
Yeah, I saw that.
5 times. And his area of research as an academic is what? Protest. So it's just like, I don't know who told you to make this move, but you must have known. This is the worst possible move you could possibly ever make.
Do you think he called the NYPD because Colombia's president had done that just, like a day or two before he had?
I think so. And then I was in the administration building a little bit after the encampment had been broken up. And well, actually I was outside the administration building because I think it was still blocked off. And I overheard the dean talking to a faculty person saying, it's just really fucked up, but no one understands how much money was at stake. And then she just stopped talking. What? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Wow.
She said it was really fucked up. Of course no one wants to call the cops, but no one understands how much money was at stake. I'm like, what? How interesting. So anyway, I do feel that if you think about other potential factors, it starts to make more sense. Otherwise, it makes no sense at all. Yeah.
So what's your opinion about the students putting up an encampment?
I thought it was predictable and fine, and I thought, as
Cute.
I can Monday morning quarterback and say, what if the administration said, oh, okay, so if you're going to be here, we're just going to set some ground rules for safety. We'll have our public safety officers assist you any way we can. Maybe we can do a teach-in, however you want this. We're going to keep this as safe as possible. That might have been different. Things might have happened differently. Right?
As far as you could tell, did any students do anything violent to each other or to passersby?
No. The president showed us during his town hall meeting so his claim is that outside agitators from Columbia and NYU had come to join the City College encampment, and that's when things started to go wrong. That's his argument. They started pulling some of the centuries-old bricks out, and they were going to do something and all that. And maybe not. However, again, had we dealt with this differently, we could have been aware of those things early on, and it would been like, hey, right? Or maybe we wouldn't have felt the need to do that if, when their 5 demands that they stated hadn't been ignored by the provost, who was too busy to meet with them. It's like, really? Not even a Zoom call? It's set up a monitor.
As far as you could tell, did students damage any campus property?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah.
Eventually, the night of the encampment raid, they broke into the administration building, and the president asked us to, like you said, I'm going to show you a video, but please don't record this. So of course, I recorded the video. I was like, please don't record this. And it's crazy. I almost think I see some of my students. And I'm like, we're so pissed at them. Like, why are you not wearing a mask? This is so stupid, And they're having this little war. So they're blocking, they enter the building and they block it with chairs. And then you see a group of public safety officers and they're breaking the window so they can spray pepper spray. It is just so insane, comical, but insane. Yeah. So then several dozen protesters got arrested. And I went to work the next day thinking, am I going to be allowed into this building? Mm-hmm. But my name was on a list as an essential worker to be allowed access into this building because I manage the computer labs. Okay. Mm. So I walk in and security says, oh, nobody's supposed to be in the building. Like, honestly, there's nobody. I said, well, I just have to get some things and just see if everything's okay and lock everything up. I said, oh, okay, well, there's an officer, an NYPD officer inside, so just tell him that I let you in. I said, okay. So I walk in, and I have to go through a phalanx of cops just to get into the building. And the officer's there is like, oh, are you... I said, yeah, I need to lock up and everything. So I thought, oh, okay. Oh, by the way, there were sandwiches and drinks that they bought us last night. I'm like, last night when you broke up the encampment? Yeah. He said, so there's a lot of extra stuff.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing.
Did you eat a sandwich?
Well, of course I did.
Yeah, of course.
I thought politically it would be a shame to waste this. It would be absolutely wrong. So I just thought, my institution bought food because they knew, it wears you out.
So did the administration tell faculty after the fact that they had called NYPD? What was the...
After the fact, yeah, there's no hiding it. So after the fact, they said, yes, we called NYPD. And
in a letter? Or how did they communicate?
Email.
Okay.
Oh, no, there wasn't an email. They told each department head, and the department head transmitted the message and said there was going to be a town hall in a few weeks. Meanwhile, that's all we knew. We had no idea exactly how many students had been arrested, who they were, and whether the school was doing anything to try to get them out of jail.
So students were arrested, but were students suspended?
No. Or rather, I should say, I don't know.
Oh, you don't
Probably
know? Okay.
Not.
Yeah.
Probably not, because that that's the kind of news that would absolutely have gotten around very quickly. And I think it wouldn't be in the school's interest to suspend anyone. I think the way that the CUNY wants to deal with it is just have it go away. Wait long enough and just have it go away and hope that in the fall it can just be passed, which is very naive and foolish of them to think that.
So Columbia did suspend students, and they ended up revoking some, if not all. I'd have to double check those suspensions. But what do you think the difference is?
I think Columbia, as horrible as I believe what happened at CUNY was, Columbia just seems so much more punitive. So much more punitive. Like they needed to make a statement and prove something.
Did City College professors and staff compare what was going on at Columbia to what happened at City College? In conversations you were a part of or overheard?
We're more focused on what was going on at City, and I mean, there's a lot of rage. I could describe the faculty response as almost uniformly enraged at the way the encampment was broken up and the lack of information. Almost the lack of information was even more enraging than what had actually happened. Yeah, it was bad.
So did that town hall end up happening?
That town hall did end up happening.
And when? It was
there were
in
like
May?
800 people.
It was before graduation,
It was before
right?
graduation.
So graduation was June 1st or something like that.
It was in April then, and no, it wasn't.
In
It
May,
was
in
It
May,
was in May.
yeah.
It was in mid-May, but before, let's say, a couple of weeks before graduation. And it happened, and I don't think anyone was particularly pleased. And I would put money that the president will not be long for his particular position, because someone has to. At the end of the day, someone has to be responsible for what happened, and it might as well be him, right? Like, there's no winning from his position, right? It's like, if you didn't call the cops, that would have been bad for you, because the powers that be would have been like, we told you to call the cops, you didn't call the cops. And if you did call the cops, which you did, no one's going to trust you ever again.
Right.
And then a week after that, there was a town hall for students, and they really went off on them.
So were the town halls for the faculty and the students, were those over Zoom or in person?
Those were over Zoom.
Okay.
No, there's no way I could imagine you would.
Right. So with the Zoom one, the faculty Zoom one, you attended that.
I did, yeah.
Did you attend the student one
I
or
didn't
no?
attend the student
Okay,
one.
yeah,
I wish I
that
had,
makes sense.
but I didn't attend the student one.
So for the faculty and staff one, do you remember how many people were part of that Zoom?
Over 800 people. Unbelievable.
And were people allowed to use the chat, or was it disabled?
Yes, but they were. No, the chat was disabled. No, the chat was controlled. Yes.
Oh.
So, I mean, you could write whatever you wanted, but then the questions were very few questions were addressed. I was really proud that our department head did get his questions in about what's the status of the students, what are we doing to help them, et cetera, and how long is this lockdown going to be in place? There were no satisfactory answers to any of these, but at least we got to ask some questions.
Did you go to graduation?
No, I did not go to graduation. I thought about going, and I thought, it might be interesting should the president get up there to speak and just counting, or any administrator, just counting the seconds right as they begin their speech before some student, or even more likely faculty, is like, fuck you, pig, and throws something. But apparently it didn't happen. Well, several people walked out, and he was shouted down for a while and was shouting back. I was like, wow, that's really aggressive. I haven't seen any video.
When you say several people, from what you heard, they were student or faculty?
Students and
okay.
faculty walked out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But other than that, graduation happened. But the last few weeks, I had to teach my last class, and it was optional in person or on Zoom. Did a hybrid thing, so I had the Zoom set up, and half the class showed up in person, and and I got to see the other classes that were in person, and it was like everyone had been hit with a bat. It was a shock. Some students who were Jewish felt that it was unsafe. They were worried about that they're going to be attacked, I guess, by protesters. I don't know. Like, there are no protesters. It's done. It's over with. And then other students just did not want to cross that checkpoint. They just felt really like, oh my God, I don't have to go through this.
Yeah.
And I understand that. It was really demoralizing having to go through that checkpoint every day for several weeks. And it just ended for me very recently. So that was really, really difficult. I thought, well, I don't want to go to work. I can imagine a lot of people feel this way. So I'm wondering about the long-term effect. How's this going to affect enrollment? How's this going to affect faculty retention? Morale, well, I know how it's affected morale. It's kind of in the toilet. So,
So for the end of the semester, how are students about turning in their final assignments or projects?
Yeah. How should I phrase it? If there was a problem prior to this, that problem got worse. So there was a typography professor, and she has 12 students in her class. And 4 students show up, and she said everyone should come in person. 4 students show up, and she doesn't know what's happening. She checks her email. 8 students said, Professor, I'm dropping your course because I don't have the final project and I don't want to fail, so I'm withdrawing from your course. She lost 8 students at once. Wow. This is unprecedented. I'm like, can you imagine? And then she said, well, what's really messed up about it is that the 4 students that showed up, I really should fail 2 of them. And I said, but you can't. I said, you can't pass 2 students out of 12.
Yeah, because that looks bad for her record too.
You can't have that. I'm like, please, you gotta bite the bullet on this one and just pass them. Give them a C or a D, but you gotta pass them. Unbelievable.
And is that something that faculty and staff discuss? Like, how are we going to grade students for the final projects?
I think the dean sent an email to all of arts and humanities saying that it's fine to take into account what kind of emotional state students are going through during these last few weeks, et cetera, et cetera. So there is no guideline, just an understanding this might happen. But, in the department, there's a BFA thesis show that happens, and that couldn't happen when it was supposed to happen in mid-May because there was lockdown and there was a zero guest policy whatsoever. So we were looking for outside spaces to have this happen, and eventually we negotiated with the dean to allow family, limited guests, a list that had to be approved by public safety and submitted every day, a list. And that was difficult, but so this is how we can have this show. But the weird thing is the show happened in June after the students had already graduated.
Oh.
That was really weird. So I'm thinking, well, we're having a show and these are no longer students affiliated with City College. That's really weird. So that was strange. It happened mid-June. Good stuff. Yeah.
Okay, was there anything I should have asked you that I didn't?
Let's see. Should have asked if I threw any Molotov cocktails at the pigs. You should have asked if I went up to the roof of Compton Goggles or Shepherd Hall with a sniper rifle and was like sniping at the pigs. That's all I can think of.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording.
My general attitude towards the pigs.
Yeah, I think we got that.
To which I would say, I of course respect authority, and I support our boys and girls and non-binaries in blue. I want that to be clear. Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.